when you examine the trajectory of Donald Trump's current situation, what becomes immediately clear is that his troubles are no longer siloed into neat categories. We are watching a convergence, a compounding of crises that feed into each other in ways that are far more damaging than if they existed separately. Legal battles are mounting, criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and investigations at multiple levels of government. Each one carries not just the risk of penalties or convictions, but the slow erosion of public patience and the constant drain on time, resources, and energy. On their own, any of these cases would be disruptive. But they are not on their own. They are connected directly and indirectly to his political prospects, to his business interests, and to the broader narrative that surrounds him. The political pressures are no longer just about competing candidates trying to unseat him. They are about his viability as a leader weighed down by legal baggage. Opponents within his own party, once timid, now see openings to question his electability without losing their footing. Each legal headline becomes a political talking point, every court appearance an opportunity for critics to frame him as distracted, embattled, or simply too risky to bet on. And the more those narratives circulate, the harder it becomes to maintain the aura of inevitability that has been one of his most potent political weapons. At the same time, his economic standing, and more importantly, the perception of it, is being affected. Legal cases mean legal fees, settlements, and judgments. They also mean lenders and business partners calculating risk, often in cold, unforgiving terms. When banks start to worry about the stability of your income streams or the marketability of your brand, they alter the terms. They tighten credit demand collateral or simply walk away. And when your personal brand is the bedrock of your political and business empire, those cracks are more than cosmetic, they are structural. The dangerous part here, and the reason I underestimated the severity at first, is how these domains reinforce each other's damage. A major legal loss can embolden political rivals. Political rivals gaining ground can embolden prosecutors to press harder, sensing a weakened opponent. Economic setbacks can make it harder to fund both political campaigns and legal defenses, which in turn deepens vulnerability in both arenas. It becomes a feedback loop of weakness, each sphere amplifying the instability of the others. For years, Trump has thrived on his ability to compartmentalize crises, to seal one fire off from the others so the whole structure doesn't burn down. That strategy seems increasingly ineffective now because the walls between these compartments are thinner than they've ever been. The legal is political, the political is economic, the economic is personal. And once those boundaries dissolve, the damage doesn't just spread, it accelerates. That's why this moment feels different, and why, frankly, the trouble is much deeper than I had anticipated. Trump's public image has always been anchored in one central claim, that he is a man of wealth, success, and unshakable financial power. Whether in real estate, branding, or politics, he has leveraged that image to project dominance and inevitability. But beneath the gloss of gold, plated penthouses, and high-profile deals lies a fundamental truth. Even the richest figures can be brought to their knees when economic vulnerabilities are exposed. What we are witnessing now is the slow but steady tightening of a financial vise, and it is happening at the very moment when Trump can least afford it. The most obvious drain is legal defense. High caliber attorneys, long court battles, and complex cases across multiple jurisdictions cost staggering amounts of money. Even for someone accustomed to large transactions, the cumulative expense is severe. Every month spent in legal warfare means millions flowing out, not in. But the impact is not just about liquid cash. It's about the ability to access capital when you need it. As cases pile up, so do the risks perceived by lenders, insurers, and business partners. Banks are in the business of avoiding uncertainty, and Trump now embodies uncertainty in its purest form. Brand value is another casualty. Trump's name has always been more than a name, it has been a commodity. Hotels, golf courses, merchandise, even political fundraising, all have traded on the perception that his brand equals power and luxury. But brands are fragile. The more they are associated with legal jeopardy, scandal, and unpredictability, the less they can command premium prices or attract high value partners. Corporate sponsors, licensees, and investors often quietly distance themselves when a brand becomes radioactive. That distancing doesn't always make headlines, but it erodes revenue streams in a steady, corrosive way. Donor enthusiasm is also showing signs of strain. Political backers, especially large ones, are not charities. They are investors in influence, and they measure the return they expect to get from their political contributions. While small dollar donations may still pour in from his most loyal supporters, the big checks come from those who see a viable path to victory. As doubts about electability rise, those large scale donors hesitate or redirect their resources elsewhere. This is not ideological disloyalty, it's a business calculation. The irony is that Trump's own style of capitalism, using debt aggressively, turning publicity into leverage, and projecting success even when under strain, is now working against him. The tools that once built his empire are less effective when the public narrative turns from successful businessman to embattled defendant. Investors and lenders are far less willing to take risks when the collateral is political chaos. In politics, perception is often reality. If enough people believe you are financially weakened, your influence can collapse even before the balance sheets confirm it. Trump's economic vulnerabilities aren't just about dollars and cents. They strike at the heart of his political identity, and that is what makes them so dangerous right now. Trump's enduring strength in American politics has never come solely from his base. That fiercely loyal segment of voters who will defend him no matter what. His rise to the presidency and his continued relevance afterward depended on something broader, the ability to draw in enough independents, moderates, and swing voters to form a winning coalition. That is where the current shift is becoming dangerous for him. The problem is not that his base is shrinking, it's that the pool beyond it is becoming increasingly wary. What I underestimated was how quickly the perception of too much baggage can take hold once a tipping point is reached. For years, Trump has managed to keep his core supporters energized through a mix of populist rhetoric, combative media strategy, and a sense of shared grievance. But moderates and independents often have a different calculus. They tend to weigh a candidate's electability, stability, and ability to deliver results over the long term. They are not immune to scandal, but they can overlook it if they believe the candidate is politically viable. Now, As the legal cases multiply and the headlines grow more severe, those voters are reassessing their cost-benefit equation. This reassessment isn't rooted in sudden moral outrage, it's rooted in practicality. In politics, as in business, people want to back a winner. If a candidate appears too distracted, too embattled, or too polarizing to assemble a majority, those outside the loyalist circle begin to look elsewhere. The problem for Trump is that every indictment, every court appearance, every leaked deposition adds weight to the perception that his chances of winning a general election are shrinking. The shift is subtle but significant. It starts with hesitation in conversations, supporters saying things like, I like him, but can he really win? That hesitation becomes a form of political contagion, spreading through donor circles, local party officials, and even among media allies. As doubts grow, coverage changes tone, and rivals seize the opportunity to position themselves as the electable alternative. Once a narrative of vulnerability takes root, it can accelerate quickly. In electoral politics, momentum is like credit. When people believe you have it, they want to give you more. When they believe you've lost it, they pull away. The loss of independence and moderates is not just about losing votes directly, it's about losing the perception of inevitability, which in turn affects fundraising, endorsements, and turnout. Trump's base may still see him as their champion, but general elections are not won on a base alone. They are won by assembling coalitions that cross ideological lines. If those outside his inner circle decide the risk of supporting him outweighs the reward, the political math begins to fail. And once the math fails, the aura of strength that has carried him through scandal after scandal may finally start to fade, not because his loyalists abandon him, but because the rest of the electorate quietly slips away. For years, one of Trump's greatest advantages was the reluctance of key institutions to confront him directly. Courts, prosecutors, congressional committees, and even some within his own party often hesitated to take decisive action, fearing the political backlash or the chaos that might follow. This hesitation acted as an invisible shield, giving him room to maneuver even when under intense scrutiny. That shield is now cracking, and the change is unmistakable. The pushback is no longer timid or fragmented. It is coordinated, deliberate, and most importantly, emboldened. State-level prosecutors, once wary of targeting a figure as polarizing as Trump, are moving forward with unprecedented cases. They are not acting in isolation. Federal agencies are engaging in their own investigations, sometimes in parallel with state efforts, creating a legal environment that is harder to navigate or stall. The legal machinery, which once seemed to move slowly and cautiously in his case, is now operating with a sense of momentum. Each case strengthens the resolve of the next, and each ruling against him sends a message that the fear barrier has been broken. This is not just about the legal system. Political institutions are also recalibrating their stance. Some Republican officials who previously treated Trump as untouchable are beginning to speak more openly about his liabilities. This does not mean they have suddenly become opponents. Many still need his base, but it does mean they are testing the limits of dissent. That testing, even in small doses, erodes the image of unanimous party loyalty that has often worked in his favor. The media landscape reflects this shift as well. Outlets that once treaded carefully around criticism of Trump are now giving more space to voices questioning his electability and judgment. When the tone of coverage changes, it influences how both the public and institutional actors perceive the risks of taking him on. It creates a feedback loop. The more criticism is normalized, the easier it becomes for others to join in. The cumulative effect of this new assertiveness is profound. Trump has built much of his political persona on the idea that he is above the reach of traditional constraints, that he can fight and win against the system. When institutions demonstrate that they are not afraid to challenge him, it undermines that narrative. The spectacle of courtrooms filled with evidence, judges delivering rulings against him, and elected officials publicly questioning his leadership chips away at the myth of invincibility. In politics and power dynamics, perception matters as much as reality. The perception now is that Trump can be challenged, and that those who do so might not only survive but succeed. That shift, once it takes hold, tends to accelerate. For the first time in years, the machinery of accountability appears to be moving without the brakes on. And in that environment, his margin for error becomes smaller with each passing day. History has a way of humbling those who seem beyond reach. Time and again, figures who appeared untouchable, whether they were political leaders, corporate titans, or cultural icons, have fallen with shocking speed once the conditions for their downfall aligned. The pattern is not mysterious. When legal legitimacy and economic security crumble together, power often collapses far faster than anyone expects. Trump's situation now fits this historical template with uncanny precision. Legal legitimacy is more than simply avoiding conviction. It is the perception that one's authority rests on a foundation that is lawful, defensible, and stable. For years, Trump managed to sidestep or deflect legal threats through delays, appeals, and counterattacks. That strategy kept him in the realm of political viability because it suggested that his legal troubles were nuisances, not mortal threats. But now the scale and seriousness of the cases against him are eroding that perception. Multiple indictments, civil penalties, and the sheer weight of evidence being publicly aired have begun to chip away at the idea that he can indefinitely fight off consequences. Economic security, meanwhile, is the lifeblood of political and business survival. Without it, the machinery of influence, legal teams, campaign staff, media surrogates cannot be sustained at the level necessary to dominate the public arena. Trump's brand has always been his armor, projecting success and stability regardless of reality. But every blow to his finances, from declining donor confidence to expensive legal judgments, makes that armor thinner. And when the financial underpinnings weaken, allies start to worry about their own exposure. This is the historical tipping point when both pillars, legal and economic, begin to weaken at the same time. The coalition that supports a powerful figure starts to fracture. We've seen this before in politics, where leaders who once commanded absolute loyalty suddenly find themselves abandoned by allies who calculate that staying close carries more risk than reward. It's rarely an ideological break, it's a survival instinct. People who once defended every action now hedge their statements, avoid public appearances together, or quietly distance themselves. The speed of such unraveling is often underestimated. On the surface, power can look solid until the very moment it shatters. The public tends to believe that someone with a loyal base and high visibility can weather anything. But once the dual erosion of legitimacy and resources reaches a critical point, events can move with astonishing rapidity. Endorsements vanish, funding dries up, legal defeats pile on, and the perception of inevitability evaporates. Trump's current predicament carries all the warning signs of this historical pattern. The legal challenges are no longer isolated skirmishes, they are sustained campaigns. The economic hits are no longer temporary setbacks, they are compounding liabilities. When history tells us that such a convergence often ends in swift decline, it would be a mistake to assume that sheer willpower or loyal supporters alone can reverse it. In the calculus of power, these are the moments when even giants can fall. The crisis Trump faces is not confined to his personal fate. It has the potential to reshape the Republican Party in ways that could linger for years. Political parties are living organisms dependent on coalitions, resources, and a coherent public image. When a figure as dominant as Trump encounters deep, sustained trouble, the party built around him inevitably absorbs the impact. This is where the stakes rise beyond one man's legal or financial woes, because the Republican Party is now entangled with Trump's brand to a degree that makes separation both politically dangerous and strategically necessary. The party's immediate dilemma is stark: remain aligned with Trump and risk inheriting his legal baggage, or attempt to move away and risk alienating the base he commands. Either choice carries profound costs. If they stand by him, they tether their electoral fortunes to a candidate whose troubles could deepen during the most crucial months of a campaign. Every headline about indictments, lawsuits, or financial strain becomes not just a story about Trump, but about the party that defends him. That association can be toxic with independents and swing voters, especially in close districts or battleground states. On the other hand, breaking from Trump is no easy task. His base is deeply loyal, energized by a narrative of persecution, and often skeptical of any Republican figure who challenges him. Any open split risks internal chaos, primary challenges, reduced turnout, and the possibility of third party or right in campaigns that could fracture the vote. The GOP's own electoral math is fragile enough that losing even a few percentage points of turnout in key states could swing entire elections. This is why the Republican Party has been slow to make a decisive move. For years, they've managed the tension by sidestepping direct criticism, offering conditional support, and hoping external events might resolve the dilemma. But as Trump's troubles deepen, that balancing act becomes harder to maintain. Voters and donors alike want clarity, not hedging. Candidates running down ballot are forced to answer for his controversies, whether they endorse him or not. That distraction saps energy from the party's broader policy message and keeps the national conversation focused on a single embattled figure. There is also a generational and strategic cost. The longer the party remains tied to Trump, the more it delays the emergence of new leadership that could define its future direction. Potential successors either wait in the wings or risk their own viability by openly challenging him. This creates a stagnation that can be fatal in a fast moving political environment where narratives shift quickly and coalitions can realign in a single cycle. The danger for the GOP is not just losing the next election, it is becoming a party defined by the legal and personal troubles of one man rather than by its own platform and vision. Once a political brand becomes synonymous with scandal and instability, rebuilding it can take years, sometimes decades. That is the long shadow Trump's deepening crisis threatens to cast over the Republican Party